Joining us now on India Upfront is Israel's ambassador to India, Mr. Naor Gilon. Thanks very much, sir, for speaking to us. I want to start by asking you naturally about the one story that the entire world is looking at right now, which is the bombing of the hospital in Gaza Strip. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces have put out multiple pictures, audio transcripts, etc. The Palestinian Authority has called all of it Israeli propaganda, and they have questioned who is to verify that any of these audio transcripts are even real. How do you respond?
It's terrible that someone thinks to make a parallel between someone who puts out a lot of material and someone who speaks. That's the reality of our superficial world today. So let's go back 10 days ago to the horrendous terror attack in the middle of a Jewish holiday in the morning, Saturday morning. Hamas terrorists, ISIS terrorists infiltrate Israel, infiltrate more than 30 Jewish communities. They slaughter, cold-blooded, 1,400 Israeli citizens, most of them civilians. Horrendous stories of torture, murder, rape, decapitation. And if that is not enough, they also hijack more than 200 people back to Gaza against every international law and everything. Now, this is where we started. And now, what happened today is another good example of the hypocrisy. So how the aggressor, the ISIS Hamas, are presenting themselves as the victim. The victim card is taken out, unbelievable, and with terrible lies. So coming out, it's very clear there is a lot of footage, as you mentioned, and evidence, technological evidence that is there, that it was misfired, short-fired rocket of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. By the way, one of 450 so far in this war that were short-fired or misfired. And even the US president, who in the beginning took out something we have to find out, now in Israel, he said, oh, okay, it was not Israel, it was the other side who did it. So the fact that someone comes out with propaganda and says nothing, doesn't show evidence, but decides that he is saying the truth without any evidence. And this becomes an equal or parallel talk to the evidence that we show is unbelievable. But if we speak of humanitarian tragedy, I would rather speak of the 200 plus hostages that are there, many of them foreign citizens, like the murdered ones. Many of them were also foreign citizens, also from South Asia. I think this is the humanitarian disaster that is really happening in Gaza today.
But what you're calling evidence, a lot of people, including the Palestinians, are calling propaganda and information warfare by Israel.
I really don't want to go, throwing things in the air like they're doing and you're repeating is not taking us anywhere. I mean, they're not showing any evidence, and everything that we show, they call it false evidence. So really, it's not even worth having this discussion. If there is evidence to the other direction, please present them. If not, please stop, because you are now instigating false information and fake news. And I don't think that people should do that.
The Palestinian envoy to the UN, in fact, said that the Israeli digital spokesperson had put out a tweet, and they have a grab of that, where he confirmed that indeed it was the Israeli Defense Forces who thought this was a Hamas installation and ended up hitting the hospital instead. This, they say, is evidence.
We can continue, and he also retracted it and said that he apologizes, he was wrong, but this is not relevant, I guess, to the discussion. The first one is the one that is relevant, but really, it's the funny thing for me that you are quoting all the time the Palestinian Authority. Let's go back to 2005. At that time, Israel had more than 10,000 Israeli citizens living in Gaza Strip, more than 20 communities living there. Israel decided to take a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza. Who was there when we left? The same Palestinian Authority. What happened? They lost the elections, and then they were kicked out by Hamas. Hamas who are, and by force, thrown off rooftops and whatnot. So again, if these are the spokespersons of Hamas, who are trying also to kill them, by the way, all these radical Islamic movements are the enemies of the pragmatic regimes in the Middle East. They are trying to get rid of the Palestinian Authority that is known for a long time. And they did it in Gaza when they could, because Israel was not there anymore to protect. But they are the enemies of Egypt, of Jordan, of the Gulf countries, of Saudi Arabia. These are the dangerous people in the world. And I beg you, don't go into fake news, continuing the conspiracy theory without any evidence. This is not healthy and not real news. Not at least, on social media, it's uncontrollable. But doing it on real media is already a problem.
Mr. Gilon, do you think that there's also an information warfare underway? Because it was quite unusual when I was listening to the spokesperson for the Israeli Defense Forces. He specifically also said that the Hamas already knew that it was a rocket misfire that had killed people inside the hospital, and yet they misled global media in order to make it seem otherwise.
But this is very clear. It's also from the past. They were using civilians as human shields. It's not the first time that they are doing it. So intentionally, they locate their shooting ranges from schools, from hospitals, from mosques, because their idea, they know they cannot compete with the Israeli Defense Forces. And their concept is, we attack, we shoot the rockets, and then we start crying, help us, they are killing us. I mean, the victim card is always there. That's what they are doing here. Unfortunately, the people who do care about preventing human suffering is Israel. Israel asked the population where we intend to go into the first place, where we will go to ground attack. We asked them to go south, to move south, so they are not in the firing zone. And Hamas stopped and put roadblocks, threatened them. We have also evidence for that, or maybe this is also fabricated. Everything is fabricated today. So we have photo aerials of that, and voice evidence of that, and even probably shooting some of them in order to intimidate them and make them stay as human shields there. So this is not surprising what's happening. This has happened in all the previous clashes we had with Hamas in the past.
What do you make of the timing? Do you think this was a mistake, or this was done deliberately before the arrival of the US president in Israel?
No, I wouldn't look. Also we never claimed that the firing on the hospital was intentional. Also the voice clip that we found, it's not speaking of intentional. They fired at the same time dozens of rockets towards Israel, and statistically some of them misfire. They have this problem all the time, and one of them went down to the hospital. It's not that it's, I don't want to believe that they are killing intentionally their own people. I don't think this is the case. I think it's a misfiring, but they sought the opportunity to use it in order to put pressure on Israel not to go into ground offense that they are very afraid of.
Of course, we've already had the US president say that according to what he's seen so far, he thinks the other party did it. But he's also said that a lot of people out there are not convinced. Now, there are other countries who have asked Israel to put out more evidence. What would you say to all of these countries who, according to Joe Biden, are still not convinced?
I don't have to prove anything to anyone. Again, when the Israeli kids were butchered, when people were beheaded, they also said that it's Israeli fake news. So really, I own nothing. I'm the victim, and I will take any measures I need in order to make sure that they will not be able to perpetrate again such actions. I don't need an explanation to anyone. People have to apologize to Israel for not supporting. And I say, there are people who are now coming, and that I will ask you to check maybe. There are people who are coming criticizing Israel on the hospital, which is a fake news, of course. But the right to criticize Israel comes only if you, on Saturday, October 7th, the same person or the same country or the same element criticized or said that it's totally unacceptable what happened then. If you will look into it, I will tell you, many of the people who are now criticizing Israel for the hospital did not criticize when 1,400 Israeli civilians were butchered. So, you know, hypocrisy is there. And again, I need to prove nothing to anyone. Everything I would say, they will say it's fake news, they don't have evidence. The other side doesn't show anything. And no country should come to me and tell me, give me no evidence. I don't owe anyone any explanation. I have the right of self-defense. I have the right to eliminate the people who killed many of my people and try to kill more. And that's what I will do.
But Mr. Gilon, especially for countries which were otherwise familiar, we know that to Saudi Arabia and UAE, on Saturday, they had expressed support for Israel's stand, for Israel's right to self-defense, but even they now have come out and denounced what happened in the hospital. Do you fear that this could turn public opinion, or at least the opinion of your friends, against you?
I think that real friends will support Israel once they understand that it was done not by Israel. Anyhow, I already saw the Italian Minister of Defense coming and saying support to Israel. I heard Biden, as you heard, say it's not Israel. The fact that people, you know, people are biased. There are many countries who are not friendly to Israel. It doesn't matter. We depend only on ourselves, and we will defend ourselves and do what is needed to be done. Again, I'm not in a position to defend myself against fake news. Please, this is not the case. We are going to defend on the ground, against terrorists of Hamas, ISIS. This is the war. The fake war that is going on social media. Yes, there are 15 million Jews in the world, okay? That's the whole number. There is one Jewish state in the world. Do you want me to give the numbers of the rest? I don't owe anyone explanations. I owe only my own citizens explanation why they were killed and how do I prevent them again from being killed that way.
Mr. Gilon, what are your expectations from the visit of the US president? Now, there are many speculation, there is speculation that could this be the beginning of a possible ground offensive in the next few days, because we've had the CENTCOM chief, then we had Mr. Blinken, then we had Mr. Biden, and we're also expecting Rishi Sunak to be reaching there tomorrow. What does this foretell for the next few days?
Israel said, I mean, by the definition of the target that was put in front of the Israel Defense Forces, it is to eliminate the ability of Hamas to reactivate such horrendous attacks and to make any effort to bring back the prisoners, the hijacked. And for that, it's clear that ground forces are needed. For now, we are working mainly from the air, but this will not be enough, and it will be a long and painful for everyone ground operation. I don't see any other way. The terrorists are hiding in underground tunnels, especially having, as I said before, civilian population above them. This is very complicated. They already threatened to, if they use their own people as human shields, to use the Israeli hijacked as human shields and to execute them if Israel goes in. I wouldn't be surprised if they, according to what they did so far, if they will do that too.
Talking about the evacuation, that still remains a huge bottleneck. Increasingly, the United Nations has spoken up, Human Rights Watch has spoken up, saying that supplies in hospitals have completely run out. Electricity supply again has not been given by Israel, and it's turned into a humanitarian crisis. Could there be a possible cessation of strikes, airstrikes, for a while to allow people to get out?
It's possible. We already renewed water. I will tell you that by international law, if infrastructure is used to attack other civilians, you mustn't allow that, including electricity, for example, that you use for the rockets, including other elements, just to mention. Having said that, we are ready to discuss and see how to make sure that the humanitarian situation stays okay. But the real humanitarian situation we should speak is of the hijacked Israeli civilians and also international civilians. People are sick, are from the, just that you know, from the age of 9 months to almost the age of 90. People who need medicine. We don't know who is there. We didn't get any confirmation if they're alive, dead, wounded, not. This is the humanitarian crisis that you should, everyone should refer to. I mean, these people are there, hijacked against international law, and the world has to make sure that, first of all, they are released. They shouldn't be there.
So I would like to ask you specifically about, what you see around you happening in India right now, especially the position that the Indian government has taken. At the same time, the first 2 days, our Prime Minister unequivocally said that, the terror attack is condemned by us and that we stand with Israel. Subsequently, the Ministry of External Affairs also clarified that India wants the peaceful coexistence of Palestine alongside Israel. What do you make of this stand? Because there's a lot of domestic politics happening around it. Where does India stand?
India very clearly, very strongly stood twice. The Prime Minister tweeted very strong condemnation to terrorism and support to Israel. First time in the afternoon of the event of Saturday, when we still were not fully aware even of the numbers. We were thinking then in tens of dead, not in 1,400 dead. And he came out very fast with the condemnation. And then in the middle of the week, he spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu and he had another tweet, very strong tweet. I think it's very clear. I don't see any connection between India as a country who has a lot of experience and suffered a lot from terrorism, of course, comes to support Israel against terrorism. There is no doubt here. And this is not connected in any way to the question of a peaceful solution. We are speaking of two different parallel lines. First of all, with terror, you deal as you deal with terror. I think India knows how to deal with terror and Israel knows how to deal with terror. And the only way is eliminating the potential risks coming from terrorists and eliminating them in other ways. And this is what we have to do. Other element of political coexistence and these are there, but they are not connected to the need now to eliminate the terrorists.
Some of our universities here in India have seen protests, especially against Israel, where people have asked for an end to quote-unquote Israeli occupation. To all those people watching you right now on campuses across India, what would you like to say?
There is only one occupation in Gaza. As I said before, Israel left in 2005. And there were elections afterwards, and Hamas won in 2007, I believe. Since then, there were no elections. So it's a one-election system. Gaza is occupied by Hamas. The people of Gaza are suffering under Hamas. Our biggest mistake, conceptual mistake that led to this surprise attack is that we thought that Hamas people, these terrorists, they think like us. So in the last couple of years, Israel opened the crossings for tens of thousands of daily, tens of thousands of Gazans to go and work in Israel, make good money, and it also gave a good, push to the economy of Gaza. And we thought that Hamas are like us; they want the best for their population. That was the biggest miscalculation we did. So we do care about what's happening to people, but our counterparts couldn't care less about their own population, and it's very hard to work in this circumstances when they are occupied by Hamas. We are not there. From 2005, no Israeli soldier, nothing. And very easy to speak of occupation, but it's not connected in any way. And the Palestinian Authority is in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. Hamas is in Gaza, in a different place. You cannot even speak of the two-state solution anymore, in the sense the maximum you can hope for is now the three-state solution. You have Israel, you have the state of the Palestinian Authority, where they are in Judea and Samaria, and a different, separate, now failed terror state, which is Gaza. This is the reality on the ground.
Finally, I want to ask you, how have the last 12 days been for you personally, especially being so far away, where practically every family has somebody either who has gone in as reservists or, you know, family and friends who have been involved in a tragedy. How have you managed to survive the last 12 days?
Yeah, you know, each one gets it in a different place. Just to say my figures, my family figures, my wife went into Israel to be with the rest of the family in hard times. I have 4 kids in Israel. I have 5 grandchildren in Israel. My father is getting closer to 90. My in-laws are not far away from him. All these people now are going into shelters, coming out of shelters 4 or 5 days, times a day. Yesterday it was a very hard day for them. They're around Tel Aviv, very central part of Israel, most of them. And this is very, very hard. And I'll tell you, in my embassy, it's quite a big embassy. I have quite a few people who lost relatives, many who lost friends. It's very hard. And each one, again, has his own inner strength or reaction to things. I am able to disconnect myself and concentrate on work, but I can tell you that there are colleagues that are really in a more dire situation, much harder for them. That's the reality of Israel. In general, we are resilient people, and we know how to change pain into action, important action, defensive action. I think this is the strength of Israel. So we are united. We are a very strong community also here in Delhi, but more so in Israel. And we will overcome. We will deal with the terrorists and try to bring back peace to our region.
Well, our hopes and our prayers are with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Naor Gilon, for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you.